Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Corinne Ponsloff and I'm the Communications Coordinator here at Light of Life. And today we wanted to put together a panel to talk about grief and loss and addiction during the holidays. And so I have with me a few other staff members today. Doug Smith is here and he's the Director of Development. Sherry Rorison is the Director of Programs here at Light of Life. Dean Robinson is our Shelter Supervisor. And then Michelle Pace is a Case Manager in our Women and Children's Department. And so today we really just wanted to get together and, like I said, talk about grief and loss and addiction during the holidays. And really, we know that holidays for a lot of us can mean family and fun and friends. But for a lot of people, they struggle with the holidays because they are dealing with the loss of a loved one or grieving some other memory or something that they've dealt with or a trauma that they've been through. And so the idea for this really sparked because Doug recently lost his sister Sarah to addiction. And so through the past couple of weeks, he's been just processing through his grief, and he's learned a few things through that. And he wrote a blog post about it, and we saw that there was a need in the community and an interest in just learning more about how you can kind of cope with those things. And so, Doug, I was wondering if you could just start by sharing a little bit about your experience in the past couple of weeks and what you've learned.
Yeah, so unfortunately, 2 weeks ago today, I lost my sister to her battle with addiction. And it's been a long journey with my sister. She started using in high school. And I've learned a lot over the last 15 years. I've been on staff here at Light of Life for 8.5 years. And I actually found out about my sister's battle with addiction shortly after I got on staff here. And I had no idea how to process it, no idea what to do, no idea how to walk my family through that. And Sherry, who's our Director of Programs here, I came to her and I just said, I need help. I don't know how to deal with this. And literally, to this day, 8.5 years later, Sherry and our family here at Light of Life has walked me and my entire family through my sister's battle with addiction. And I just thought it was an opportunity to share with people how I've processed that journey, what I've learned, in hopes that it will encourage them. Maybe someone's watching this and or reading that blog post and they're battling with addiction, or maybe they have a loved one that's battling addiction, or maybe they've even lost someone. And so I just wanted to share what God's taught me through my journey in hopes that it'll lift people through a tough time. And like Corinne said, a lot of times throughout the holidays, it could be a sad season. And so we hope today, through what God's taught us, that we can help lift those people who are struggling this holiday season.
Doug. Yeah, so today we're just going to talk a little bit more about grief over the holidays, but also hope to give you some tools for you or a loved one maybe that's struggling that you can really take from this and get immediate help, or that will just help with different coping techniques. And so I have a few questions that I am going to ask the panel, but as you guys are watching, feel free to put your questions in the comments, and we'll kind of be monitoring that, and we can ask those as we go along. If there's someone specific that you want to ask a question to, or if you have just a general question, either way, you can just put that in the comments. So we'll go ahead and get started. And the first question that I have for you guys is, what triggers grief or sadness during the holidays? And is it normal to be sad during this time?
A lot of people don't know this, but the highest rate of suicide and depression is the month of December into the beginning of January. So it's very common for people to have depression or want to have suicidal thoughts or not knowing how to deal with those feelings. So it's very common. Yeah.
And what are some things that can trigger that grief as people are going through this season?
It could be having to be social. And when you're depressed and you're down, you don't want to be social, but yet society as a whole is saying you have to go out and party and you have to go out and do these things, and there's a certain expectation upon us, and so we struggle with not being okay. Guys?
I feel like a lot of times sadness come on during the holidays because you have lost a lot of loved ones in the past. So I believe dealing with that grief of your loved ones not being here anymore, it changes the holiday. And I'm speaking from the heart on how I truly feel, because the holidays don't seem the same. You just feel sad. So what I have to try to do is just make myself enjoy the holidays and the festivities that we have here at Light of Life, the parties that we have, because then once I go home, I'm by myself. So I have to do a lot of praying. I listen to spiritual music. I just have to do a lot of things to feed my spirit the right things, because other than that, then I will stay stuck in that sadness and continue to struggle the whole holiday. And that's not the purpose of a holiday. The purpose of the holiday is, to love on others and the birth of Jesus. So I gotta learn to just continue to do those things and not stay stuck and do therapy, whatever I need to do, support groups with my church, whatever it may be, that's what I do to come out of that sadness and not stay stuck into those struggles.
And Corinne asked, is it okay to be sad? Of course it's okay to be sad. I know for me, if you know me, my personality, I can be bubbly and want to have fun all the time. And a lot of times it can seem like I try to put on a mask and not actually admit that I'm sad, but I've been extremely sad over the last 2 weeks. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being sad or experiencing grief or walking through that, but how do you walk through that becomes the question. And you have to allow yourself to enter into community and friendships and family that can you allow people to love on you in your grief and in your sadness. And so my encouragement would be, yes, it's okay, be sad, admit that you're sad, and allow people to come into your life in your sadness and meet you where you are.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so one question is, if someone has lost a loved one and the holidays make them sad like this, how do they change the thoughts to not be sad? I know, Michelle, you kind of touched on this a little bit by surrounding yourself with community, but are there any other kind of coping techniques that in the moment when you're feeling that really deep sadness, how can someone kind of try to pull themselves out of it?
I think it's really hard. If you're sad, you're sad. And it's okay to be sad, like Doug said. It's how can you work through that sadness in a healthy way. And I think those are the tools that Michelle was talking about, whether it's getting around somebody that can listen to you. I think people listening to you does a whole lot. So you find a good listener, because you just want to talk about it. You want people to understand your feeling, and you don't want to isolate inside yourself, because that's when you get in trouble. So I think it's okay to tell people that you're not okay, but that's not the norm. So if they could take away one thing, like Doug said, be able to say when someone says, "How are you?" Well, you know what? I'm really not doing okay. And to talk about that instead of, "I'm fine, how are you?" That's our standard.
I was talking to a friend of the mission who you would all know, who unfortunately lost a loved one very close to him several years ago. And he was just asking me how I was doing in processing grief. And he actually encouraged me, and he said, something we've done to help with the pain around the holidays is we created a tradition every year where they visit the gravesite of their loved one, and they put poinsettias out because they love poinsettias. And then they all go out to lunch and just share all the good memories that they have about that person. And it really challenged me. It's like, I need to do that with my family around my sister, and I've also lost my mom, and we never do anything intentional like that. And so maybe even just creating an annual tradition where you share the memories and the legacy of the one you lost, I think that could help a lot.
One of the things that we're seeing here a lot, and especially at Christmas time, is people volunteering or doing in the honor of somebody. So it's like we have somebody that recently came to us, and they lost their son. So they gifted a lot of the men in the program things in honor of their son. So it's to not let that legacy die. Like I'm not, her death's not going to be in vain. This has made me motivated to help change. So it's maybe coming outside of yourself and giving back. I'm seeing a lot of that this year.
Yeah, I love that. I think that can be so powerful too, because it blesses other people, and it makes, like you said, it's not all about you and your grieving process. It's like, how am I blessing these other people? So that's a really good point, Sherry. Okay, so then a question is, I'm dealing with anger. A few things have made me sad, but then that turned to anger. Is that normal, and how do I manage that?
Part of your stages of grief is anger. So if you would tell me that you're not angry and you're going through those stages and you're not angry, you're missing one of the stages. But it's what we do with our anger in a constructive way. It's okay to be mad. It's like, but do you punch the wall, or do you work with that anger and talk about that anger? So anger is normal in the stages of grief.
good to know. And then if someone is are trying to be happy, kind of like Doug said earlier, like they're wearing that mask of trying to be happy, but nobody really knows that they're sad deep down inside. And why should they talk to someone about that, or who can they talk to about that?
It's important to open up about what you're feeling and what your emotions are. It's also kind of hard, especially early on. You have to find someone that you trust to be able to sit them down and talk to them about what you're feeling. And with repetition, that will become easier where you'll be able to voice that to more people. All of these feelings, the fear, the anger, the sadness, or regular emotions, they come. It gets damaging when they become a paralyzing to not allow you to move out, that makes you isolate and things of that nature. That's when you get into the danger zone.
Yeah, and I would just say that we were never created to do life alone, ever. And so I believe, and again, we're a Christian organization, on the faith side of things, when people isolate, and we see this all the time even with the men and women we serve, when people isolate, they can get into a really dark place really, really fast. And so it's crazy what the enemy can do in isolation. And so I just want to challenge you, if you feel like you could do life alone, you can't, please get in a community and around people who love you and can love you and you could be open with.
And then the next question is, if someone is struggling with addiction and the holidays are making it hard to cope, is it okay to skip the holiday festivities with family or friends? I know earlier we were talking about making a plan, so I didn't know if you guys could kind of talk on that, because that goes along with community as well.
Michelle's our plan maker.
Well, I feel like, it's okay if you don't want to go to that festivity with your family, and if you do decide to go, you just need to have a plan of action to where you take somebody with you. If you know that your family's going to be drinking or whatever and you're in recovery, you take someone with you to support you, and you don't stay long. You go in and you visit for a minute and you leave, because it's not this environment that you really need to be around. You should always have a plan. Action plan, some type of action plan. You should always have that.
And you should have somebody with you. It's okay to pop in and show your face and get out of that environment, especially if you think it's dangerous for what it is you're going through. But you have to have someone in your life that you can lean on and talk to and trust and be able to open up honestly with.
And that's why I like what Doug was saying. You can't do this by yourself. This is a we thing. You have to build that support, and it's a must. You need that we, because we can't do this thing called life by ourselves. I don't care who you are. Whether you're in recovery, a Christian, or just an average human being, we all still need other people in our life to help us and support us no matter what.
Yeah.
One of the great things about Pittsburgh is we have a ton of self-help groups,
Yes.
So even if you don't have that we already built, that you can walk in at any time. I mean, they run 24 hours a day, especially around the holidays, that you can just walk in and be greeted with a smile, be greeted with somebody that can understand, not you wanting to even walk in those doors and relating to it. So, please, as Corinne said, leave us a message. We can get you connected in any of those places with anything. Because a lot of people just don't have that we, or don't think that the we around them is strong enough or positive or could even understand. So I know within my own family, people don't understand, So if you're struggling there, we're here. We can get you connected. And like I said, Pittsburgh is a fantastic place for, support groups and people understanding what you're going through now.
Also, I remember in my addiction, before I got clean and sober, I could remember holidays and sitting there getting high and actually talking to the hotline. And where I got that hotline from, it might be old fashioned, but the telephone book. That's where I got that phone number from. The telephone
that?
book. I know, that's what I'm saying. If you don't know what the telephone book is, just a whole bunch of everybody in the whole city's phone numbers. So I would call the hotline and just talk to them. I mean, all the time. That was like my support because it was just me. I had my kids, but my kids were little, so they were ripping and running, and I'm sitting there getting high and just talking to the hotline constantly. And eventually, from me talking to the hotline, they got me connected to treatment. At first, I was, leery and waited like a month, and then right after Christmas, I decided to go, which would have been January the 30th, which is my clean date. Mm-hmm. So it does work talking to the hotline to people that you don't know. I just would just talk and just be open to them what I was struggling with through that process. And it was the holiday season, to be exact.
That's so good.
Yeah, I love that because I totally resonate with, like, not everybody in your life is always the people who understand you, and sometimes having that outside perspective or that person that's unbiased and they don't know you at all can be so helpful. So I'm glad that you shared that, Michelle. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, if I'm not the one in addiction, but if someone in my family or a close friend is dealing with addiction and it's affecting everybody around me, and I'm really scared about that, what can I do? What steps can I take to help them or to move forward?
That's a hard one. When it comes to addiction, and unless that person's ready for help, they're not going to receive help. And with it being a loved one, you cross limits with that. And in the field, we call it enabling. So at some point, you don't want to cut them off. You want to let them know that you love them, but you have to have boundaries to what you're going to do and how you're going to address the situation, because you don't want to cross over into that stage of enabling. Pray. I'm a firm believer that prayers are answered, and I do believe that someone prayed me into recovery. That's about the best method.
I believe, I look back at my life, and I believe how my family handled mine was, they wanted to rescue me. There was family members that wanted to come just grab me and take me wherever to get me help. And there was other family members that were in recovery and said, no, that's not how you do it. When she's ready, she'll reach out. So they let me hit my bottom. And I actually had to hit that bottom, and I had to get sick and tired of being in that addiction to come out of it. And to me, it's like I said, talking to that hotline is probably what did it, helped do it, along with probably somebody praying for me. And I think one of the eye-openers was one day I just looked at my kids, ripping around, running and playing, and I just looked at their parents, and I was like, oh my goodness, look at my kids, you know what I mean? And that was like an eye-opener too. So it's just like things in your surrounding too sometimes that help bring a light to you, because there is hope, because you feel like there's no hope. You feel like you're stuck. There's no way out, but there is a way out. So if there's anybody out there that believes there's no way out, if you're caught up in your addiction and there's no way out, yes, there is. There is a way out. Believe me, there is. If God can save me before I even really had a relationship with God, he can save you. There is ways out. Just reach out to Light of Life, the hotline, whoever, your church, people in the community, and they will get you the help that you need.
Corinne, I think you asked a question, or part of your question was, what can you do? And I think that's what we want to do, is we want to be able to fix people, or fix the people that we love, because we don't want to see them suffering. And the problem is we can't. They have to want it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's being able to love, and I think Doug can attest to this with his journey. It was his ability to love Sarah where Sarah was at. Yeah. And when Sarah was ready, he was always there. He talks about the phone call right before she passed, and what a great time, and that he would see glimpses of who Sarah was. But he continuously loved her with boundaries, and loved her maybe not the way she wanted, hey, give me $20, but it was like, here, I'll go have a hot meal with you.
Yes.
Here, I'll take time out and have that conversation even though I'm busy. It's loving her where she's at and not where you want her to be. And that's a hard thing, huh, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could talk about this forever. Multiple things I learned throughout loving my sister through her journey and walking our family through. First is, as Sherry said, love the person where they are. I think the hardest thing when you have a friend or family member in addiction is to forget that they're a real person and to separate them from their addiction. My sister, because of her addiction, made choices and did things that made all of our family extremely upset and angry. And it would be so easy to just be like, that's who she is. But the reality is, that's not who she is. Yeah. That's the battle she's facing. And so my favorite times walking my sister through her journey was when she would get clean, and I would see glimpses of the sister that I always knew and loved. And as a believer, I believe those are glimpses of the relationship now I'll have with her in eternity, which is a wonderful thing. But if you're struggling, learn to love people where they're at. That doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. That doesn't mean you don't have them. But separate their addiction from who they are and try to look at them for the great characteristics you love about them. The second thing I would tell you is get help, right? What did I do when I found out my sister had an issue with addiction? I called Sherry and I said, I don't know what to do, because I didn't. And the reality is, you may not be resourced, and I would encourage you, please don't try to make up a recovery plan. Get help from someone who does. Call Light of Life. We get people all the time that I connect with Sherry and our team, and they actually help them walk through the process. That was extremely, extremely helpful. On the personal side, probably the most helpful thing that helped me throughout the whole journey was an exercise I believe I got from Henry Cloud. And he just encourages people to draw a T on a notebook, a T table, and on the left side of the table, write in my control, and on the right side of the table, write out of my control. And so in my control, I could love my sister when she needs love. I can call her, I can pray for her, I can be there for her when she needs help. But things that were outside of my control, if she relapses, if she goes back out again, if she makes poor decisions, right, I couldn't handcuff her to myself 24 hours a day. And so what I found was so much of what was causing me anxiety and fear around my sister were things that were outside of my control. Yes. And as a believer, and I don't know how people process things like this without faith, but as a believer, I had to learn those are the things I need to cast my care on God. The Bible says that we can cast our care on Him because He cares for us. And so I said, okay, God, I can't carry these things, and I don't want to carry these things. I'm going to trust you with them and trust you to walk me and my family through that. And that was extremely helpful. And the last thing was just setting boundaries. Sherry was very, very helpful. She actually gave me a book when I first told her this called Changes That Heal by Dr. Henry Cloud. Again, that's Changes That Heal by Dr. Henry Cloud. Phenomenal resource. And this is a little bit of a funny story, but I had no boundaries growing up, and I know nothing about boundaries. So Sherry said, read this book. But then she gave me another book, and she said, here's the workbook. Do the workbook. And I thought I was special. And so I looked at Sherry and I said, workbooks? I don't do workbooks. I can just do the work reading the book. And she said, oh, it must be really awesome to read all these books, Doug, and not do anything with it. So I said, okay, Sherry, I did the workbook. And actually writing out and processing some of these things changed my life, allowed me to learn how to set healthy boundaries. And so maybe a little bit of content, but hopefully that helps you today.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned a recovery plan, Doug, and so for someone who maybe a teenager who has a parent that's in addiction and they're alone with that, like a single parent in addiction, or if they have a close friend, like where do they even start with saying, like, what is a recovery plan exactly, and like where do they start by saying, like, here's how you can get yourself into one or get through that?
You know, the effects that it has on kids is huge. And to say to a kid, here, a recovery plan, it's more like, okay, how can we do this without it affecting us? And I think once again, it's getting with a teacher, you know, getting with a counselor, getting with a friend that understands, you know, there's a support group out there for everybody, you know, whether you tell a after-school counselor or you tell your church youth group, that somebody's going to get you somewhere. But I think it's first admitting it and talking about it. So whether you're an addict or even it almost like we're raised up with secrets. Don't tell, don't tell, don't tell. And that's the opposite. Like, we need to tell. We need to tell how we're feeling. We need to tell on things, you know. and not keep that secret or think that we can burden it by ourselves, because that, again, that creates isolation. And isolation is really a killer of any kind. So whether we isolate our feelings, we isolate physically, or we isolate issues or secrets, that all of that's bad. In God's word, it tells us to bring light, and light creates truth, and truth creates freedom. So if we do the opposite and we isolate and we keep in the darkness, that's room for the devil to move, and it makes things 4 times worse than what they really are. So once you start bringing light to things, you start to get real truth in those things, and you're able to deal with them.
Thank you. So switching gears again here, around the holidays, a lot of times, especially, this is year round really, but people might see someone living on the street and really want to help them, but just don't even know how to help. And I know that has crossed my mind before. Do I give them money? Do I give them a water bottle? Like, what's going to help these people? So could you just speak on if you see somebody on the streets, especially in the winter time, but really any time, what is a good first step to try to get them help or to assist them?
I get those calls every day.
Yeah.
We tell people the first thing they want to be concerned with is their safety. You want to make sure you're safe. And if this person is in an area that is populated, then you can approach that person and see what it is they need, or what it is you can do to help them. We advise people not to give out money, but then you got to watch that too, because if they're looking for money and you don't give them money, then that might get them angry. So the calls that we get, we advise the people that we run an overnight shelter. We let them know that we serve 2 meals a day to the public, and we let them know where we're located, and that if you could get them to our area without putting them in the car, giving them a bus ticket or just giving them the information so they could come to us, we can help that person. We also have an outreach team that goes throughout the city that can possibly go to that person and get that person and bring them the light of life so we can start working with them.
I'm gonna say again, Pittsburgh is wonderful with resources. So it's not just Light of Life has an outreach team, but there's many outreach teams that work the street. And there is more resources for the homeless. So I particularly would not advise my mother or anybody to go up to anybody or to give money, because you end up doing harm. But it's to support the agencies that are doing good work. And so if it's you want to go on outreach and you actually physically want to volunteer and do that, call one of the agencies and they'll be more than glad to have you part of that team. But again, if you're doing it yourself, you're isolating. You're not with community. So again, I would encourage people to get involved in a community that's helping if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I always share a story. There was a guy in our program we were in a small group with. Unfortunately, he relapsed and was drinking, and we saw him outside with a sign every day saying that he needed money. Now, I knew him, right? We knew him, and he was coming to the shelter every day for food. We know he didn't actually need money. He was getting taken care of, or could have been taken care of. And I actually had a client tell me one time that when people are out on the street, they can make, on average, $250 to $400 a day just by holding a sign. And let me just say this. That doesn't mean that your heart shouldn't break, right? Whether someone's going to use whatever you give them for good or for bad, the fact that they're in a place in their life that they're willing to stand on the side of a street should break your heart. And so I just want to encourage you, this person, unfortunately, someone gave him money one day. He ended up getting drunk that night and passing out in an alleyway. It was freezing cold, and he froze to death in an alleyway. And I know that's brutal, but someone gave him money that day thinking I did a good deed, and drove home thinking I did a great job, not knowing that they paid for his last drink and basically paid for him to pass. And so, unfortunately, that is the reality. And so we encourage people, maybe have a bag of Kind bars in your car that you can hand out. We have cards at Light of Life with our program, service times, meal times, and number on it that you can hand out. Warning on that, sometimes they'll get thrown back at you. But again, just I hope that helps. But Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a big difference that when you're talking about sympathy and empathy.
Yes.
And sympathy will keep a person stuck where empathy raises up to another level. And so I think we really need to maybe do inside ourselves. Am I just trying to make myself feel better because I feel bad? Or am I really trying to raise that person up?
Right.
And so I
That's
think
good.
it's really society as a whole moving from sympathy to empathy. And empathy helps bring a person up. You know, sympathy kind of holds them there.
That's really good.
And I believe sometimes though, when you see a person and you're constantly seeing that person in the same area, I mean, you can get resources and information and give it to that person also.
Yeah.
Because if you're seeing them on a steady base, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You can gather up some information, you know, you can give them food or whatever, you know, water, but you can also give them the information where they can call and get some help.
And they know. They know where the resources are. We have a highway right down the street from our mission, and there will be people standing down there with signs saying that they're hungry. And we serve 2 meals a day right up the street, 2 blocks away. You know, they're aware of the resources. They're just trying to get money.
Thank you guys. That was all very practical and helpful, I think. And yeah, so were there any other questions that came in, Jenny? Okay. So if you guys do have questions, that kind of wraps up our questions here. But if you have additional questions, you're welcome to send us a direct message. You can always call our mission, and we're happy to answer questions for you. We have the resource cards that they mentioned a couple of times that just highlight our programs and our emergency shelter that runs every day of the year, our meal ministry that is 2 times a day, breakfast and dinner every day of the year. And so there are ways that we want to equip you to really be able to help and just to support you in any way that we can. Just to touch on Light of Life, we also have recovery programs here for both men and women and children. So there's always that resource as well that we'll be happy to give you more information on if you need it. So all of the hotlines and the different resources that we mentioned today, we will link in our comments below, and then obviously you can always reach out for those as well. But is there anything else, like closing wise, that you guys want to just add or share that we didn't cover before we kind of sign off?
I know this was mostly about addiction, but holidays can be really, really sad for other reasons than just death. You know, grief is a process, and we grieve from divorce, and our life's never the same. We have a tragic fire, you know, and we lost all of our favorite Christmas ornaments. That's grieving, you know, you're breaking a tradition. And so it's to respect those feelings that we have and not think, oh, people have worse than me, you know. But it's to reach out, because if you do go through a divorce, that's grieving too, and that's hard. How do I live Christmas for the first time without my wife and kids? Or, you know, how do I go on without the husband in the home? So there's so many things that the holidays bring up in grieving that it's just not having to do with addiction and death. And I really encourage people to reach out and to ask for help, because again, suicide is the highest peak during the holidays. And depression, if you suffer from depression, it's even more. And as Christians as a whole, we want to say, okay, I just need to trust God. I just need to trust God. And yeah, you do. But part of trusting God is reaching out to those that can talk to you, listen, and help. So I just wanted to encourage that it's just not about addiction, that, you know, Christmas time can be hard for a lot of reasons. So
I agree with Sherry saying. One of the personal things I'll share with you guys is, like how she said, grief is not just about losing a loved one. Actually, like, it's like losing somebody, but they're still alive, like being incarcerated or anything like that. That is a big loss. That is, I mean, it hurts and it's painful to go through that when you know one of your loved ones is incarcerated for years and you don't really get to see him, or because you want to see him out here living life and not locked up where somebody's running their life. So there's so many ways how she was saying that grief plays a part in your life, whether you're in recovery or you're not in recovery. It's a painful thing.
I want people to understand powerlessness. You know, we don't have power over other person's thoughts, behaviors. You know, we only have power over our own thoughts, behaviors, and attitude. We have to understand that we have to love these people that are going through these different obstacles. But we also have to know that we're powerless.
Yeah, and I would just leave you with that what we do here at Light of Life matters. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a staff member. You know, I've been passionate for the past 8.5 years working here because I would tell people, because my sister, and I guess I didn't share this, my sister had been in and out of our program a couple times. She ended up homeless at one point. And if you would have told me prior to me working at Light of Life that I would know someone, let alone have a family member at Light of Life, or have to go through one of our programs, I probably would have laughed. But what I've come to realize in the past 8.5 years is that everyone who walks through our doors is somebody's sister, it's somebody's brother, it's somebody's father, it's somebody's mother, it's someone's son, it's someone's daughter. And when you know that, and what these guys deal with, these are my heroes, right? I just get to share about the great work we do. They're in it day and day, and they're fighting life and death battles every single day. And for my sister, in the natural, we didn't get the win we wanted on that side, but what I love about Light of Life is what sets us apart is we're a faith-based organization, and what I do know about my sister because of her time in Light of Life is I do know she knew Christ. Yes. And when you're a believer, the Bible says that we don't grieve like those who have no hope, and I know that firsthand, and I know that I'll see my sister again because of the work we do here. And so my sister is just not in my past, she's in my future. And if you've lost a loved one in Christ, they're not in your past, they're in your future. And anything that you didn't get to do with them here on earth, you'll get that opportunity to deal with them again. And so I'm just honored to work at a place. And now I would tell you, Sherry talked about the anger side of grief. My anger is getting turned into purpose and passion. I'm twice as angry and twice as passionate now to fight the battle. I've seen victory. We have so many graduates who have graduated Light of Life, and the appreciation I have now for those who make it in the long haul, who have been clean for 10, 15, 20 years, who have turned around their family tree because of the time they spent here, it changes everything. And so I have more resolve now than ever, and I just want to say thank you for your support. When you support the mission, you support and transform lives like my sisters and everyone who walks through our doors. And so thank you so much. And we have a lot of work to do, and
Right.
You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Right. So one other thing, just real quick. I know I'm running my mouth, but I just feel like God is leading me to say this. How he talked about Light of Life and he bragging about Light of Life. It's really true because I am a product of Light of Life also. I came through Light of Life in 1997 and graduated and completed the program and started working here in, I think it was 2000, 2001, somewhere like that. And 1999, 1999 started working here and been working here ever since. And will be celebrating, if God's willing, on January the 30th, 23 years. So it does work. And I just wanted to say that, not bragging or anything about Light of Life or not bragging about me, just to let you guys know that there's hope. If I can do it, you can do it. Anybody out there, I just wanted to let people know, women, men, whoever it may be, that you can do this. Yeah. It's possible, because I never thought I would have a day clean, and here I will be celebrating 23 years. So yes, you can do it.
I think one other thing that I just want to touch on is, and ask you guys to kind of clarify, is like, if someone's watching this right now and they don't know Jesus, and they want to, like, can we just talk about, like, all you have to do is ask Jesus for forgiveness, ask him to come into your heart. We can even share a prayer of salvation with you on our comments, or we're always happy to pray for you if you call. So I think that's just something to, like, really highlight too, is you might not know Jesus right now and you're listening to a bunch of believers talk about this hope, and so that's always an option too. If you want that prayer of salvation, we're always happy to do that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, other than that, I think we kind of have come to the end of our discussion here. We just ask you guys to share this on your Facebook page. Share it with somebody who you know might be struggling, if you're not struggling alone. And anything that you need from us, we're happy to resource you. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, let us know if you need anything.